Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to Escape to Nature, where currently I'm coming to you Loyo Waterhole in the Etosha National Park of Namibia. My name is. I'll be controlling the Waterhole Dam cameras, both here at the Okukuyo Waterhole as well as at the Djuma Waterhole in the Sabi Sands of the Greater Kruger National Park of South Africa. And I'm not the out usual. We've got down at Amakhala, which is in the Eastern Cape, South Africa, as well as Lauren, who's in the wonderful Madikwe Game Reserve that's in the northwest province. A wonderful range locations. But as per usual, please don't forget that this is an interactive safari and escape to nature. So please send through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going onto the Wild Earth website or jumping onto the Wild Earth app, and you can also on YouTube. So we'd love for you to be on board with us, and we'd love to hear from you. It looks like it's a wonderful day here in the Etosha National Park. Lots of animals, as per usual, are going to start coming down for a drink and starting out here with the Dazzle. Just see if we can head in a little bit closer to them. If my controls will play along, remembering that I do control them remotely, so I'm not there in person, although I was there in person just a couple of months ago with a group of guests, and I know this reserve like the back of my hand. So we can expect quite a few animals coming down. They do come in their droves, and the zebra, the blue wildebeest, the oryx, the springbok groupings we can expect to be coming in and out as the day progresses. Lots of birds initially in the early mornings. We normally expect the Namakwa sandgrouse coming down for a drink early on. And then also the doves, and I've even heard some hornbills, grey hornbills flying past. And we may also catch some sounds from boo-boo or shrike. But for now, just a lovely dazzle. Looks like there is a little bit of wind coming in from the east. It's blowing straight over us and towards the west from this particular position, towards the coast. But this being in the sort of northern central part of Namibia. So it's quite far from the ocean. And there has been a little bit of rain about, not in big quantities, but I think it's just the last little bit of the rainy season that we have been seeing. Generally, from this time of the year, and then we start to see lots and lots more animals coming down to this particular waterhole because there's not much else in the way of standing water for 15 or so kilometers in each direction. So it's a very vital water point for this particular part of the national park. Mango, how's it? Hello, welcome aboard. Lovely to have you on board with us, and thanks for your kind words. There's actually a guy that works down at the car park where I go surfing, and he's a friend of mine, and he always does a little dance for us in the car park. He's a very entertaining chap. So I like that name, Mango, and I also like eating that fruit. We do get it growing here in the Eastern Cape, where I'm from, in Port Alfred. But lovely to have you aboard, Mango, wherever you are. So, as I say, it looks like a wonderful day here in Okukuyo, in Namibia, near Etosha National Park. Wind coming in from the east, but let's go and find out what the weather is going to be like across the different locations.
Morning, morning. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us out here in the Eastern Cape at Amakhala Game Reserve. I hope you're all doing well and ready for your wilderness experience out here. And we started off with a lovely group of giraffe just milling about over here. Just lovely. So we actually set off and we found them immediately. So quite a quick find, which is quite nice. Morning, everybody. My name's Andrew and Morgan, still behind the camera. And we're going to try and find you as many animals as we possibly can this morning. We'll see what is out and about. There are 3 amigos that weren't found this morning, unfortunately. But maybe this afternoon we'll give it a bash and see if they're not out and about. We do know sort of their favorite little spots that they hang out in. So we'll try and check those at some point and see if we can't find them. Look at these giraffe. There's so many here. There's actually quite a few calves in this group. They've been hanging around here for a long time now. It's, I would say maybe a month or a bit more. And it's actually a great place for them to hang out if you think about it, because there are all these sweet thorns that are growing here. So there's plenty of food for them here. And the water is not too far away either. So that's the prime reason why they've been hanging around here. And it seems like we're officially in the rutting season of impala. We just heard them rutting earlier on, which is quite nice. And roughly in about 7 months, we should start seeing some lambs walking around. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to start off the game drive in the morning. We make our way up the sandy road and we bump into these giraffe. It's almost daily that we see them up on this ridge over here. It's just amazing that they blend in so well, especially when they start to crouch down or bend over like that one is doing over there, looking for the vegetation. And as you can see out here, the vegetation is quite short, especially of the sweet thorn. They don't grow very tall here because they do get attacked quite quickly by elephants. And so there's a lot of these short vachelias or sweet thorns. And the giraffes, they just need to bend down a little bit more. Good morning, Martin. How are you this morning? Martin, they can definitely survive, most definitely. It does put them in a slightly more vulnerable situation because their heads are all the way down and sort of like right up against the vegetation, opposed to having their heads elevated while feeding. But they adapt, and that's what I love about nature, is they're masters of adapting to the environment. And they've got no problem venturing out of their comfort zones. And this goes for most wildlife. Just hearing some hooves hitting the ground on my right-hand side. So the impalas have just run behind the vehicle. One of the adult males chasing one of the younger males. As their testosterone levels start to rise, they really start to get quite annoyed with one another, especially the males. Shelly B, thanks for sharing that. It's good to know that you enjoy giraffe. Now I know you just a little bit more better. No, giraffes are wonderful animals to watch and to work with. Yeah, they're very special animals and very unique animals at that. There's no animal in the bush that is as tall as them. And if we think about actually how high some of these big bulls are, Now, 5.5 meters, that is very, very tall, and there's no animal on this planet like them. I would just love to be a giraffe just for a few minutes. Can you imagine the view that you would have if you're a giraffe? You can see past the vegetation because you're much higher, and then with that good eyesight, they see everything that's going on in the near vicinity and quite far away as well. Now, if I was a giraffe, there's one thing I wouldn't particularly like very much, and that's getting into a fight with another giraffe, because it gets very, very serious. It's been a few years since I've seen a serious fight. But a good few years ago, even here on Namakala, I watched two giraffes, actually on one of the main roads close to one of the lodges. They were having a fight, and I wasn't even with guests. I'd already, dropped the guests off for breakfast, and I unpacked my cooler box, got back into my vehicle, folded the blankets, and off I headed back to my accommodation. And on the way, these two giraffes were in the middle of the road, really having a barney. And the one giraffe hit the giraffe, and it got knocked right off of its feet. And it laid motionless for a few moments, but then managed to get back up onto the hooves. In all the years I've worked with giraffe, all of the years that I have worked with giraffe, I've never ever seen them display aggression to people or to vehicles or anything like that. Although I did have one situation where I was doing field clearing with my tracker, Morris. Some of you might know him from being in the front of the vehicle there in Pridelands. Sometimes there's a tracker sitting on the front on a special seat on the, almost by the bull bar, on the bonnet of the vehicle or the hood. And I was with him, and we were doing some field clearing. And so, of course, we're not looking for animals. We want to get from one point to another point and do some brush packing, especially when leopard have been seen on the game drive and the vehicle's off-road, and, create a little bit of a road going in. Our job that morning was to take some branches and brush pack the area so that that area can grow back quite nicely. So we weren't looking for animals. We were on a mission. And I drove around this corner, and suddenly a giraffe was on the side of the road. And I gave this giraffe such a big fright that he launched out with a kick, a back kick, towards the vehicle. And he missed because we were not that close to him. But when you see that hoof kicking towards you like that, wow, you develop a load of respect for them. And we often see, through documentaries and also with being there, we've seen them sort of get into arguments with lions sometimes. Lions try and hunt them, and you see how they try and kick lions. It's crazy.
We hope that when you watch Wild Earth, you will fall in love with nature. We know that our explorers share a passion for nature and want to make a difference. Wild Earth Schools is back. Sign up to be an explorer, and your subscription will help us reach the future conservationists of our planet. Invest in something that truly matters, encouraging children to care for our beautiful wild Earth. Wild Earth Explorers, make a difference.
As I'm sitting here, and I know we're watching giraffe, but just a little bit off the topic, I'm just thinking about that black-footed cat that myself and Morgan saw a few days ago. And I wonder if these giraffe have ever come across a black-footed cat, because even though it's a small little cat, they will definitely see it. And I've seen before in other game reserves where African wildcats are occurring. One day we were watching giraffe, and these giraffes were just staring in the distance. We had no idea. And again, Morris, my tracker, said there's something around here. It could be leopard. So we entered the block with our vehicle and we just looked around. We tried to figure out where these giraffes were actually staring, and we noticed a little African wildcat walking through the grass. And they're very subtle. They're small cats, not nearly as small as a black-footed cat, but still small. And they're able to spot it and stare at it. And that black-footed cat that we saw is not far from where we are now. Well, the sun is starting to sort of poke through the clouds now. It's been overcast for most of the morning. Things are slowly going to start warming up, I'm sure. Sebastian, good morning, good morning. So Sebastian, there's for a very long time we identified these darker bulls as being older bulls. But with new studies and new observations, it's been noticed that even younger bulls are getting dark. And so they thought that was genetics, and it could very well be that genetics also plays a role. But what they're saying now in the books is that giraffes that are in a dominant state, they become darker because they are releasing testosterone and they become darker. And that's another reason why an animal like a red hartebeest is a lot more redder and darker in color than that of the females, because of the level of testosterone and dominance. So that's what we interpret nowadays, is giraffes being darker are dominant individuals with a high level of testosterone, and therefore making them dark. But you might find, from area to area, they might, sort of adapt, and they might be a little bit lighter in some areas, a little bit darker in some areas. But bulls, when they are dominant and they're in their prime, they become very dark, no matter the area that you're in. It's always spectacular to see these big, big bulls being so tall and so dark. There's even a bull here in Amakhala that is almost black. So the patches of the kaleidoscope in their pattern, those dark patches are black with one of these giraffe on Amakhala. He's a beautiful bull. Anybody want to try and give a guess how you tell the difference between a male giraffe and a female giraffe? We'll give a few moments to see what comes through. Okay, we're going to push on. This was actually quite a nice viewing of these giraffe, but I believe Lauren has got a giraffe as well. It's a carcass, so let's see what is happening and what activities are going on there.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to yet another action-packed day in Madikwe Game Reserve. It is actually drizzling a little bit here, but very, very lightly, more so spitting. I would say. So I don't quite know what's in store, for the afternoon. But anyway, welcome aboard your live safari. My name is Lauren, and I do have Rian on camera. And we are going to sit and spend some time here, of course, because there's a lot happening. This carcass has been going on for days, and you can see we've got the hyenas, the jackals. The vultures are not around, but I'm sure they will be, and there is less and less of this carcass. It's a very overcast day. It's chilly. Still, oh, it's a kudu. I'm not sure you'll be able to see him, Rian. Okay, I just wondered what it was they were staring at. It's a kudu bull, but Rian won't have a visual, I'm afraid. And it's starting to spit, so I hope we don't get proper rain. It's definitely not what we want, a wet, soggy carcass. But I am looking forward to your questions and discussions. Escape to Nature is a lot slower and immersive, so we really can get stuck into good discussions between the three of us, Ralph, Andrew, and I, all given our unique perspective. Look at that. The jackals are so full. That one is just passed out. Too full. Gonna sleep now. I am feeling very grateful for the conditions, because when it's hot here, the glare of the water and the sun is really difficult to withstand for long periods of time. So I am grateful that it's overcast. Thomas, we sometimes do get to see jackals, but I agree with you, not this number, and not for and not for this long, where we can really sort of study their behavior, their body language, their interactions. So it has been a treat, Thomas. I absolutely agree with you. Jackals are definitely not this common in the Lowveld. You see quite a few of them in Amakhala, but really high numbers in Madikwe. I mean, Madikwe is huge, so of course there's going to be high numbers of all the animals because there's a lot more space. But jackals are just everywhere. But really, you normally find them on their own or running around in pairs. So it's really nice just to see. I mean, how many have we even got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that I can see. Some of them might be hidden inside the giraffe. And there are many that are scattered around the place. So it's a lot of jackal. And it's nice to sort of spend time with the canids. Normally safaris, well, all the attention goes to the felids, really, the cats. The lion, the leopard, the cheetah. They get a lot of attention, of course, as they should. But sometimes the canids don't so much. And naturally, we have the wild dogs. That's a canid that we do get to spend time with when we can. But jackals are also canids. And I guess if you think about it, hyena was actually classified as Hyena picta. That's a Latin name. In 1820, it was thought that a hyena was a type of dog. Remember, the Latin name for a wild dog is Lycaon pictus. So it was Hyena picta. And then, of course, it was reclassified 7 years later in 1827, and it's now a family, Hyaenidae, and the spotted hyenas are Crocuta crocuta, but originally Hyena picta. Oh, no, sorry, I've got that the wrong way around. I'm tired. I've been driving a lot. The dogs were thought to be hyenas. Sorry, I've got that the wrong way around. Apologies. The dogs are now Laika on pictures, but they were originally thought to be hyenas. Wild dogs were originally thought to be linked to hyena as part of the Hyaenidae family, and they were called Hyena picta. Apologies. It's been a long few weeks, forgive me. But yes, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that there was a strong link back in the day between hyenas and the dogs. And I think that hyenas look really morphologically like dogs, sometimes behaviorally like dogs, but really they are actually more closely related to the cats than they are the dogs. And again, both very distant. They're in their own little unique family called the Hyenidae. Sometimes I just like to sit at a carcass and just listen, because it's maybe a bit too windy today, but you can hear the crunching and the munching, the squabbling, the swallowing, the tearing, the birds in the background. You can hear a lot if you actually just sit for a moment or two and listen. Can you hear that? It's an amazing, all the sounds you can hear if you actually just sit and listen. This hyena's really crunching through the ribs and you can hear it snap. It's quite a terrifying sound, actually. Activity on this carcass in terms of hyenas has died down. On that first day, we must have had about 20 individuals all roaming around. 15 to 20 in that region. Forever squabbling jackals. Paris, sadly, no, I don't. I haven't spent nearly enough time with the hyenas. Very The sightings have been very few and far between, and I haven't been handed over any information, I'm afraid, so no, I don't. If there was a den that I could sit at every day, I absolutely would. And I could probably start to figure it out. It would need time, it takes time, but sadly that's just not been the case at Madikwe, I'm afraid. In Djuma, it's been very easy, and we followed that clan for 12 years plus. We know all the history. Whereas obviously Wild Earth are very new to Madikwe, and we would need to really, I think, sit at a den and follow them as much as possible. Obviously an unhappy Ellie, but I can't see it. Where are you? Rian can see it. But this is a bit of a hotspot for Ellies because it's water. Ellies, even on a cold, overcast day, will still come to drink. So this is a real Pukojwe pan. It's an attraction. Animals will come. And naturally that will create drama because we have a scene in front of us that most other animals are not really going to like. Nothing is going to waste here, nothing. Foggy, Anne? Not that I know of. It's just a pattern or coloration. Possibly breaks up the body outline as most sort of patterns on animals do, but not that I am aware of that have any specific function. If they didn't have spots, they would just be hyenas. They wouldn't be the spotties. It makes it really easy for us to identify, though. The spot pattern is the same from juvenile to adult. Once that spot pattern emerges in the cubs at about 3 months, it doesn't change. And as long as a pattern on an animal doesn't change from juvenile to adult, whether it's a whale shark, whether it's a tiger shark, a turtle, a zebra, a hyena, a leopard, then you can use it for positive identification. You can identify turtles by the facial scutes, the scales on either side of the face, and they don't change. They do get bigger as the animal grows naturally, but they don't change. Whale sharks, you can actually identify them by a triangular area on their pectoral fins. Zebras, you can identify them by a patch near their elbows, if you like. Hyenas, you can use a spot pattern on either side of the rib cage. Leopards, well, you can look for different patterns, but the most common one is the spots on the first whisker line. But you've got to be sure that it doesn't change from juvenile to adult. If it changes, then you can't use that. But spotted hyenas don't. So you can really sort of use any part of the hyena. Normally, the large part on the rib cage is the most prominent, obvious thing to our eye. And we can sort of create patterns or shapes. Makes it really easy to identify. But you could also use the spots on the neck, the spots on the shoulder area, wherever you like. If it helps you identify that animal, then I guess you can use it. I find hyenas really easy. It's remarkable. I find leopards easy. I hadn't been to Juma in over a year, and I was a bit nervous at identifying the leopards, and immediately I just knew who they all were as soon as I saw them. And I find lions really difficult. Obviously, I can identify amber eyes and purple eye and blue eye and all of those ones, but I do find lion prides particularly difficult, and some people find it really easy. We had a director who worked for us, and the directors were incredible at identifying the animals, and we used to play games with them where we would put it on camera and they had to tell us within 5 seconds which character it was. They were all unbelievable. And one girl in particular could identify a female lion within 10 seconds from both Juma and the Masai Mara. She could tell you exactly who it was and which pride it was from. Remarkable skills. And she loved doing it, you know. But I find lions quite challenging, but I do find hyenas really easy. I just think they all look so different. But everyone's different. Everyone sees things differently. Everyone's perception is different. So not everyone is going to agree with me, of course. Haileys are coming. There's something behind. There's something here. The jackal is looking at it. I don't know what it is. I can just see it's something moving. It's not an elephant, but I don't actually know. I think it's wildebeest. Ah, yes, wildebeest. I just saw grey bodies moving through the thicket. The elephants are upset, but I don't actually think it's because of this. They're behind us. I think they're upset at something else. And they're going to be even more upset when they discover this. Those alleys are all behind us, so I'm just keeping my eye on that area behind us. Margaret, yes, absolutely. That's actually the importance of a carcass in the wild. All living beings are houses of nutrients. Even us. We are a store, we are a pantry of nutrients, lots of them. And then when we die, the nutrients are locked up inside of us. And it isn't until decomposition or a breakdown of a body like this by the scavengers that all of those nutrients are released and recycled. This is called the nutrient cycle, and it's incredibly important in nature and not often spoken about. And all the nutrients are released and disperse into the soil. And it's these guys here, hyenas, jackals, even the pied crows, even the vultures, that are responsible for this dispersal, recycle, and release of nutrients. And it's incredibly important for the soil. It makes it very fertile, and then it enriches the soil for all the vegetation. Then the vegetation will thrive because of all these nutrients, and of course the vegetation is eaten by herbivores. And it's a really beautiful cycle, and that's why even after death, animals are still so important in the ecosystem. Carcasses are, I guess, thought of as not very nice and disgusting, but they're really not. I mean, even humans eat meat. Okay, not in this way, not in a giraffe that's been lying out, but naturally the hyenas don't have the opportunity to go to the butchers. So they're just eating meat just like humans do. Where are these Ellies? They're behind the car. I'm on such a tangent they are. And it's been proven many times that the nutrients affect the vegetation so much. There are lots of different studies that will show you a specific plant within the area where there was a carcass, maybe the previous year or the year before that, will grow about 5 times larger than the other plants of the same species in the area. It has such a profound effect, and it's the nutrient cycle. And that's where decomposition is important. If the giraffe lays there and nothing opens it for a long time, the nutrients are locked inside. So yes, it changes the soil, it changes the plant life, the plant growth, the food that's then available for the herbivores, and of course healthy herbivores, healthy carnivores, and it's just this cycle, the circle of life. And that's why a lot of countries are sort of aiming to relax their regulations when it comes to the disposal of animal carcasses. Yes, we're in a game reserve in South Africa, that's something different, but in other countries, if there's a carcass, it's immediately removed and disposed of elsewhere. But actually, that animal probably should remain there. Yes, there's a worry of spreading disease and pathogens and bacteria, but there's also an importance in leaving the carcass there. Carcasses play a role, they have a function. Even after death, animals are still needed in the environment. So a lot of countries are looking at sort of relaxing their regulations, governing that approach, that they really shouldn't remove carcasses straight away. Maybe they can cordon the area off or monitor it, but shouldn't really be removed from the ecosystem. Biodiversity in all thrives where there's a carcass, which sounds a bit strange, but it does. The insects are drawn here, it gives life to the insects. A lot of insects can lay their eggs there, which they need. A lot of birds will come down for the insects. So the whole animal kingdom thrives in just a very small area where death happens.
On April 27th, Wild Earth will be celebrating a very special birthday. It's our Sweet 16. We want to celebrate you, our viewers who have been with us every step of the way.
I just appreciate you so much.
Send in your birthday wishes so we can include you in the celebrations.
Happy birthday, Wild Earth!
Video yourself saying happy birthday to Wild Earth with a short note and share them with us on birthday@wild.
Seems to be a really upset youngster. No. Oh, honey bunny. I wish you were not this upset. This is an older female who's just monitoring the situation, I think. She's not really reacting to this youngster's behavior. Nelly, I know he face planted. I hope it didn't hurt him either. He's very, very upset. See, the female, the tuskless female at the front is reacting, but not as panicky as a youngster. She's aware of the situation. Look, she's smelling. But she's also not reacting like that young one who's just very, very upset. Very so. It was all very dramatic, and I must say it didn't really make a difference to our apparently starving hyenas and jackals. No reaction whatsoever. They're actually moving the carcass quite a bit. Every time we come here, it's in a different position because we think, oh, we parked here yesterday and we had a better visual. And they're really yanking it and pulling it, and they keep sort of changing the position of it. You can see the elephants walking away. Dear, oh dear. Darcy Miller, I don't think so. I think that was 2 days ago now. Was it yesterday, Rihanna? The day before? The day before, yeah, that was 2 days ago now. I really don't think a lioness is still hanging around. I really don't. I don't know where she is, but I really don't believe she's still here. And the elephants are definitely reacting at this. There's without a doubt the smell that is coming from this carcass. It's really strong. It's death. It's carrion. Not only the smell of the carcass, but the smell of the jackals, the smell of the hyenas, everything is very upsetting for an elephant. And of course, their sense of smell is far greater than ours. And they're reacting. They're reacting to. Oh, wow, warthogs on the scene. Chasing away a jackal. They are reacting to the smell without a doubt. Not even the sight. Not even really the sounds. It's without a doubt, in my opinion, the smell. I mean, Darcy Miller, the lioness could be around, but I just doubt it. I think she just came here for a drink. She probably had a rest and then went to rejoin her pride or to go about her day, whatever lionesses do. Look at this jackal at the water's edge, Rian. Oh, it was sleeping so soundly. It hasn't even moved, even when the elephant was taking a tantrum. Warthogs have been quite brave. Not sure it's a good idea to bring your young ones here. I think maybe go to the other side. Well, we're definitely going to sit tight. I'm more than sure that we'll get more drama at the carcass, but I believe Ralph has got some stripes for you all.
Yes, indeed. Lots of stripes. Thanks, Lauren. Looks like you got lots of trumpets going on that side. All those youngsters trying to get rid of those predators. The young elephants, I should say. And it seems like they're not too perturbed because of those young elephants shouting the odds, but the hyena's not too perturbed at all. Anyway, lots of stripes here, and not just the vertical ones from the zebras, also the horizontal ones from the counter shading colorations that we get on the springbok here in the foreground. So you can see that birds of a feather do indeed flock together, although there is an amalgam of different animals here. You always see them sort of grouping up with their same species. So springbok with springbok, zebra with zebra, wildebeest with wildebeest, and gemsbok with gemsbok. It does make for lovely groupings though here at the waterhole itself, and lots of movement now. Lots and lots of animals coming down, probably for a drink, and then they'll head off and go and graze. But they do need to walk pretty far for that decent grazing, so it's an important sort of trek to come here and have a drink. And then you see them lining out, as you can see those zebra there in the background, heading off a little bit to the south, I would think, towards that Mopani thickets or scrub in the background, interspersed with the acacia karoo or the camel thorn trees mixed in the background. So I haven't seen anything in the way of predators here. No jackals, which is surprising for me because this is normally very well frequented by jackals per se. They do move around the camp. They get in through the holes, little holes, as well as warthogs and the mongoose. And in the camp itself, you also have resident ground squirrels in the campsite itself. And the warthogs like to go and feed on the lovely lush grass that is watered by the camp staff. And so we often find those animals within the park, within the camp itself, I should say. And the little squirrels can also be quite naughty as well. They often steal things off your table in the campsite per se. So you need to keep your eyes on them. Otherwise they start stealing your food while you're making your salad. But lovely just to sit here and watch all these animals as they come in and out, filling the very important part of the day. But like I've said, it's also for the predators a lovely point of concentration for these animals. So they can sit around and wait, and they know that the animals need to come down to drink. I don't think that they actually think that in their heads, but they know that this is a very well frequented spot. So we often do then see the lions off in the background here, and they do hunt in this particular area. But with it getting quite warm today, you wouldn't expect to see the lions coming down for a drink at this time of day. I've seen them do it, but it all depends on what's been going on. Have they made a kill and have they fed? Maybe then they would come down for a drink. But then you wouldn't see these animals like this next to the waterhole. You'd immediately see them all shift back and be looking in a particular direction where the lions are. And I've often seen that, and as always, we use the other animals to show us where the predators are. I'm just going to go in a little bit more if I can, just to have a look at those zebra that are drinking there. When I zoom in, we obviously don't get that lovely nice big picture of the whole water hole, but at least we get to see the animals a little bit closer. And it's nice also just to hear the animals as they walk in and out of the waterhole too. And when there's anything that spooks them, you obviously then hear them all rushing off, and the rush of water as well as their hooves run through. Even springboks, they are not scared to head off into the middle of the water. And one heading in there on the right. He's more of a connoisseur of fresh water. So as the season progresses, we're going to get more and more animals here at this waterhole. This is just the start. Just zoom out again. We never know what's coming sort of on the outskirts or anything that we may miss. So I do like just to double check every now and then and make sure we're not missing something like an elephant walking in. Another group of zebra making their way in on the right there. Nice and busy. So have any of you ever been to Etosha? If you have, let me know some of your special encounters or sightings that you may have had across the park, but in particular here at the Okukuyu Waterhole. I'd love to hear your stories. Very, very special waterhole indeed. Let's just have a look at this group on the right. It's just arrived. I would assume they're going to be here the longest of the zebra now. See, something spooked them, but it's very often false alarms. Lots of false alarms. The one oryx making its way in there in the background, most likely a bull. Not a cloud in the sky. So Cameron, there has been some reports of zebras being able to be trained, but in general, they are pretty untrainable. And there's a very interesting story that went down in Rhodesia, which was what it was called at the time, now current Zimbabwe. And when there was the Bush War there, and before that, they had a plague of rinderpest that basically wiped out all the horses of the infantry or the army. And so they had no horses to use for the army itself, and so they started to try and train zebras to replace them. And I think it was after about 2 years, a program where they tried to train them to do similar function of horses. They abandoned the project because they said it was basically impossible. But I have seen, and I think it's in India, where they've been able to train zebras to pull carts similar to donkeys, and in that way, sort of getting them domesticated in some way. But for the bigger part, I don't see too much evidence of zebra actually being able to be domesticated. And I'm pretty sure they are, as a whole, able to be domesticated. But we must also remember the many, many years that it's taken to domesticate horses and donkeys per se. So with a similar sort of period, I think we could definitely get zebras along the same vein. But we're talking, 50 to 100 years worth of consistent training and domesticating, habituating, etc. So I think it's possible, but I don't think the time really has been put in to get these animals domesticated. And I do prefer them in this particular kind of environment. And I think we'll stick to using horses and donkeys in the current way that it is. But it would be lovely to have a donkey cart or a zebra cart pulled by stripies. I'm sure some of the kind of mules would be easier to domesticate, especially like the likes of around Swakopmund in Namibia. There's quite a lot of mixing of zebra and donkeys, and you do get an offspring if they do mate. And the locals call them zonkies, but they aren't able to breed from that point. So it's not another species. It is. It sort of stops at that particular point, but quite a strange looking animal. It's really, as you would imagine, a mix between a zebra and a donkey. Some sort of off-white, black and white stripes, but also some gray colors, etc. I suppose it depends on the donkey that mates with the zebra in terms of its coloration as to how the offspring are going to look. But quite strange. And those ones easy to domesticate, but I think it's the genetics of the donkey that's in it that allows for that easier domestication. This guy looks like he wants to be the center of attention. This oryx in the middle, and I do find oryx the most glamorous of all the antelope. They're just perfect in my mind. perfect horns, perfect coat. They're like the royals. And I often find when there's big numbers of oryx as well, they generally take over the waterhole, and the other animals do give them a lot of leeway, because I think they're rather dangerous and they're very good with those horns. So they do hold a lot of respect in amongst the rest of the antelope. And we see there in the background there also a couple of pied crows coming down for a drink. Super intelligent birds are the crows. This oryx really enjoying his drink. I think cooling down as well. Honestly, taking center stage. And their facial markings are just, yeah, impeccable as well. Everything about oryx I find interesting, but also perfect. Highly specialized animals, as are the springbok. Seems like he's had his drink and he's off. Let's have a closer look at the springbok having a drink. Lorraine, you're going to Okukuyo next week. Wow, fabulous. It's heading slowly into the busy season, but I think you're going to hit it at a very good time where there's not too many people, but we're still starting to get the concentrations of animals here. And remember that if you haven't been to Etosha or not, doesn't matter. Remember to head straight to the camp office. And when you check in, just check that sightings book and see where the lions have been spotted. You may get lucky as you come in. Head first to that Ombika waterhole. Have a check in there in that lovely spring that is sort of, it seems like it's underground. There's quite a big cavity or cave that the animals walk down to drink from. And then once you get to Okukoyo, check the sightings book. And if you haven't spotted lions on the way in, then head to Okondeka, right up on the northern side, straight up north from Okukuyu. And I'm pretty sure you'll be able to see those Okondeka lions or the pride that comes from there. Otherwise, I would suggest that if you're looking to see lots of elephants, you need to head more to the Namatoni side. But heading even to Halali, the Rietfontein waterhole in the middle, generally do find lots of elephants there. And just keep looping around on all those little less traveled roads and game drives that not everybody heads on, especially where there's a waterhole. And now, this time of year, the animals are going to be concentrating around the water, but the elephants more so on the eastern side, not too much on this side of the reserve. But remember always to check that Goas waterhole near Halali. Very, very good waterhole and very busy there. Lots of leopards I've seen there. Elephants, giraffe, lots of special birds. And Rietfontein, obviously, also a good one. The elephants like and frequent that waterhole too, as well as looking under the, there's some old remnants of a farmhouse next to the Rietfontein waterhole, and the lions are often lying up in the shade there. So chill those spots. Just some tips and tricks for when you go to Etosha. And of course, always go into the tower at the camp itself. You have a lovely view, especially for sunset. And if there's not too many people there, it's a wonderful way to take up a couple of drinks and have some sundowners. And for me, I've never seen the sun anywhere else in the world than here in Etosha. Now, what has spooked these springbok? Is it that we may have a predator coming down? or have they once again been alarmed falsely? Let's just have a check. I'll head off to the left here. Looks like there's more springbok on this side. So, as per usual, I think it's a false alarm. They can get spooked even by the birds flying past, or they get just some kind of little smell or anything, and then they all bolt. But it looks like they're all coming back now. Is that some kudu coming down? Looks like it.
Towards the end of May, I'm going to be heading back to Djuma, which is one of my favourite places. Now, as many of you know, we need a little help keeping our operations going. For those of you who donate $100 or more, I'll take you on a private safari. It won't be entirely private, there may be 20 or so of you there. But you'll still be able to answer any questions that you might have. We'll visit all the places that you want to, and we'll look for all the characters that you'd like to see.
So that rutting and the increase in testosterone obviously triggered by the circadian rhythms and the light or the length of daylight. And as it starts really dropping off and heading into winter, we're getting the much shorter days. That generally triggers the increase in testosterone in the males across the antelope species, and so then they start getting angry with each other. Up until this point, they may have even been moving around in bachelor herds and very friendly, more so with each other. But suddenly now, with the increase in the chemical changes within their body, they turn to fight. You'll also find them sort of taking out some of the aggression on bushes, from the impala to springbok as well, and a lot of the other animals too. It's quite important for them to do that because not only are they marking with the glands that they have in between their horns, it's also a visual marking, but it's also good exercise and strengthening of the neck without actually fighting with another male. But at least the increase in testosterone is it's not instant. So they do start getting a little bit angry with each other in spurts. And so they do slowly but surely start exercising the neck and then getting bigger and stronger in that particular part, because it's important for them to be as strong as possible in the neck area for them to be able to fight. And particularly with the horns, they need to have lots of muscle mass around the neck area. Otherwise, they'll be very easily beaten by other males that have managed to grow that particular part of the neck and be stronger for it. So that's what it's all about. If you're an antelope male now, you want to be as strong as possible to be able to beat the other males for mating rights. We got another oryx that's come into the middle. So Georgia, as soon as the rut starts, excuse me, shortly after the rut starts, then they'll start mating with the females. So this is the period, the rut, and immediately mating, and then 6 months later, normally coinciding with the increase in daylight and also the spring rains. So that's where we talk about the animals sort of aligning their birthing around when it rains. And so the rut, starting when the days get shorter, and then the females giving birth as the days get longer. And normally that is in springtime with the increase in rain probability. So that's how it's all sort of matched out naturally, and that's how then it works normally in the best of everybody's interests. When there's the most amount of food around, rain probability is much higher, and so it then is good for the females who require a lot of energy in the birthing process and sustaining those new little offspring. Everybody needs lots of food at that particular time, so it's perfect to align it when there is more food and resources around as well. Getting very busy now. So as I say, this is starting to get busy now, so this gives a good indication of what's to come. There's just going to be more and more animals around this waterhole now, and sometimes you can't even see the edge of the pan itself. It's extremely crowded sometimes, and that's why, it's so popular to be at this particular waterhole, and why it attracts a lot of attention. Almost don't know where to look. Some of the springbok coming here in the foreground where there's nice fresh water coming in, but I think it's just by chance. There seems to be one or two of them actually drinking from the pipe itself. You see there, just in the foreground here. This little one closest to us, that's where the water comes out, and that's where you'll find the elephants going to that particular spot as well. Lots and lots of springbok. There's some more impala there on the left, having come in now. So let's see if we can get a closer look on them. Very special impala indeed. Looks like it could be the same male that was there earlier. It's maybe his little group of females. Now this is beautiful. And they're also good to see quite clearly the difference between springbok and impala. I know people that are new to wildlife and new to safaris, and have never seen the two, cannot use them, but there we go. Both have sort of counter shading colors, but you can see how the Springbok a little bit more dainty. They're generally more out in the plains, and they can run over, faster over a much longer distance than the Impala, which are more comfortable in the thickets, but you will find them out on the plains, but they generally don't stray too far from cover. And they're much better in the thickets. Both male and female have horns with the Springbok. Only the male has horns with the Impala. They do look similar, but you can see that color difference on the Impala. They don't have that black band going down the middle. And they're also quite a bit bigger, generally, than the Springbok. Springbok, you can tell between the males and females, much thicker horns on the rams. And the ewes have got much thinner horns. I always say if you put your two thumbs together, you can try it yourself. You put your two thumbs together, those are the male's horns. If you put your two pinkies together, that's quite indicative of the female's horns. So always just think of that when you are trying to identify between a male and a female Springbok. Do the thumb and pinky check. Then the Impala, obviously, males got horns, females none. So exhibiting real sexual dimorphism where there's not much to speak of, or none present with the Springbokies. And the Latin name of Springbok being Antidorcus marsupialis. You see right at the back near their tail, they've actually got a pouch there. And that's what led the early scientists to believe that they may have been marsupials with a pouch, but it's more just for display purposes, especially when they pronk and do that very typical spring that they do with their head down, their legs straight out, and they can jump up to about 2 meters. Very often see them doing it in the early morning when they're nice and fresh, lots of energy, and when they often plonk around. So there is some evidence there that the elephants have been around, or some elephants have been around. It looks like they may have been here during the night. A couple of dung balls, and in this particular patch here on the left, this is where they do like to dust bathe. So the previous viewer who said that they're going to Okukuyu, if you didn't know, when the elephants arrive, stick around and come onto this side, on the left side of the waterhole. When the elephants do come, you get very close to them. Firstly, they like going to drink from where that fresh water is coming out, where this one Springbok is drinking here on the right. And after they've done that, they'll also spray themselves generally, especially when it's hot, which is generally the case in Etosha. And then they'll move off here to the left when you get a very close view of them, and they'll use that very fine dust to dust bathe after they've had a bath. So just remember that you can sort of move into that zone. If there's lots of people there, you can get there first and you'll be ahead of them, because you'll have that little tip. And then you can sometimes even be dust bathed with the elephants, because they throw the dust, and I've stood there and had the dust thrown on me as well. So it's quite impressive. And then you'll really get to see how big these elephants are. The tallest, biggest elephants in the world. So it's absolutely incredible to be close to these particular elephants. In the campsite, if you wander around, and you can go right up to the fence, if you see the elephants coming off in the distance, sometimes they take the path right next to the fence, and you can be literally within 5 meters of them with the safety of the fence in between you. But just remember, don't make too much noise or whatnot, because the elephants could also go through that fence. So don't disturb them, nice and quiet, but you can have a wonderful experience being nice and close to them, but through the fence. And then when you get here, you're in a nice raised position, and there's a wall with a fence that sort of runs diagonally, keeping you safe from them.
Okay, so myself and Morgan, we've sort of been adventuring in a totally different area to where we normally go, and we've come across this beautiful small group of eland antelope. How many there? There's 6 over there, and they're pretty much mixed here. There's a couple of bulls and a couple of females as well. They're still quite young, these eland. I'm not sure how long they've been here exactly, but I remember when I used to guide out here in Amakhala for the 3.5 years, we often noticed that there were eland out in this open section over here. So yeah, it seems like they've probably been here for quite some time. Usually there's also loads of red hartebeest out here and big groups of impala as well, but I haven't seen them just yet. Just looking closely at them, they actually look like all females to me. Yeah, there's more on the top of the dune, yeah. Yeah, it's a bit too far, but there are some more on top of the dune. They're all just waiting for the sun, and they're sitting there patiently, just waiting and waiting. But luckily for them, it wasn't too cold last night, so they were pretty fine. And then this morning, it's a bit cool, but it's nothing like we've had before. We wake up in the morning and it's just really cold, lots of strong winds. But this morning, it's very, very nice. Ah, there is a bull in there, I see there. Most of the Bushman art that I've seen in South Africa, they often illustrate eland. And in the hunter-gatherers, depending on sort of which tribes they were in, they all believed that there was something about eland that was very, very different to the rest of the antelopes, which is quite true. And what happens is sometimes, eland, when they die, you actually see tears rolling out of their eyes and dripping down their face. And in some of the African cultures, they believe that their ancestors are inside this animal, and they would be hunted by the hunter-gatherers. They believe that this essentially was the jackpot of all jackpots, that this animal was provided to them from their ancestors. Other sorts of animals that we see in Bushman art, I know in the Kalahari, it's quite consistent that they often illustrated the Kori bustard. So there was something with Kori bustard that they believed in. And then other things we saw in the Kalahari, which was actually quite fascinating, were these perfect circles that were engraved or etched onto the rocks. And they had some anthropologists come out there to study these paintings and so on, and sort of try and decipher how old they were. And these little circles that they noticed, they were trying to figure out why circles, what's going on there. And they came to the conclusion what could be happening was, in the time of the Bushmen, when they used to meditate and have their ceremonial displays and things like that, that they really did meditate. They got themselves into such a trance when meditating. And some of those trances were helped along by some of the hallucinogenic plants that grow in the bush. And they believe that these little circles could have been an induced migraine. And I'm not sure, some of you might have had these painless migraines where your vision is a little bit disturbed and you see this little spot in your vision. That could be what they were seeing. and they believe that that was a message or a sign, and so they engraved it on the rocks. And we also noticed out there in the Kalahari that some of the circles that were engraved were connected. So it almost looked like a figure of 8, so 2 circles connected, and they believe that maybe friends were together and they both had sort of the same hallucination, and they depicted it on the rocks being connected. So of course we'll never know 100% what is going on there, but it's just fascinating. And I think Bushman art is great because it's your sign as to what sort of animals occurred in the area. If there's Bushman art and they're illustrating things like giraffe and eland and lions and those sort of animals, then of course they must have occurred out there. Now in the Eastern Cape, they've noticed at some of the Bushman art sites that one animal is missing in their art, and that's giraffe. And it's presumed that giraffe never actually truly occurred out here in these Eastern Cape environments. So who knows? I see this one eland on the far left-hand side. It's got a few faint stripes on the sides. So you do see that every now and then. It's probably genetics involved there. Almost looks like a kudu in a way. Good morning, Michelle. Thanks for your question, Michelle. So, most of the time with eland, they're going to get on the hoof and start running. And these animals can run pretty quick, and they can jump pretty high as well. So sort of their defense mechanism when they see danger or they smell it and they feel that they're under threat is to really start moving, and their endurance is very, very good. So for them to run for a long distance and not stop, it's very possible with them. And they're quite strong. They can run up the dunes and then down the other side, run to the next dune, down to that side. But in the event that they're being attacked and they feel that they can't get away, I promise you this animal will put up a big fight. Any animal will. Now with black wildebeest, I believe it's between the two. It's either black or blue wildebeest, but of the antelopes, they produce the most amount of testosterone. And with that does come a bit of aggression, and wildebeest are very, very strong, but they're also designed in a way that if they feel that they're threatened, they're going to run away, but they've also got no problem fighting. There's apparently been recordings of black wildebeest, killing smaller antelopes before. That has been seen, when you don't see this really with the other antelopes. But yes, eland is a ginormous animal. There are some elands here in Amakhala that are easily 700-800 kilograms. I know there has been some eland recorded in Africa getting up to a ton. So it's very formidable. It's a very tough animal. Now with those sharp, straightish horns, they look straight but they're actually spiraled. They make good stabbing horns. And if they manage to get a hold of a lion with those horns, that lion is going to really take a beating. It's going to get stabbed in its body. But what I love about the Latin names or scientific names of the animals, it's very descriptive. So with eland, it's the Torotragus oryx. So toro refers to a bull, so a bull-like animal. Then tragus refers to goat. And then oryx refers to a stonemason's pickaxe. So it's actually very descriptive. If you look at their horns, very much looking like little pickaxes. Because of their sheer size, they do look like, bulls or cows, if you will. And then their faces, especially with young ones, they can sort of, I don't really see it too much, but they can sort of resemble that of goats. Now apparently they are so powerful, eland, that when they jump from a sitting down position, they can clear 2 meters. That is incredibly high. I've actually seen an eland jump a few times, and your brain doesn't know what's happening because you're seeing such a large animal jumping so high, but nothing like a kudu. I've seen kudu jumping a few times. I'm sure Ralph and Lauren have as well. They jump so high. I've seen them jump over fences before. And the game fences around game reserves are 3 meters high. And they've got no problem getting to the top. Sometimes their hooves don't even touch the fence. I remember once in another game reserve, I was watching eland, and then suddenly lions appeared. And they were stalking the eland. It was only one eland, a massive bull. And he saw these lions coming, and he had no options. He was truly trapped. And he elected to run straight through a fence line. Ran through the fence, he jumped, hit so if you have a 3-meter fence, you cut it in half. So just above the halfway mark, that's where the eland hit the fence. And the fence just popped down, laid flat on the ground, and quickly popped up. And then the lions, they obviously couldn't pursue anymore. So the eland voluntarily chose to jump right through the fence. Interesting that. That was also quite crazy to see when you see a big animal like an eland, almost taking down a fence. That is crazy. But I believe they can kick as well in defense. Their kicks are very, very powerful, especially the hind kick. And definitely don't want to get caught up in the middle of a kick. They've got very sharp hooves, and those hooves are very big. Just wonderful animals to watch. Now, Wild Earth's birthday is coming up. Remember that on the 27th of April. Going to be celebrating 16 years of incredible game viewing with all of you. And I think it'll be a wonderful way to celebrate is if you send us some nice videos. You can sing us a song, or you can do what you like, really. And you can send that to birthday@wildearth.tv. I know a lot of you have been watching from day one. That's incredible. You are all very loyal to Wild Earth, and I'm very proud of all of you. Amazing how they blend in when you look at the top of their back being a little bit darker with a sort of reddish yellowish color. When they sit down, I mean, they can blend into the Earth's color very, very well. They do very well in dry, arid regions as well. So although we are in a drought, it makes no difference for eland. Now, there is water available on the reserve. Of course, it's very selective where they're going to go, but they will drink water at watering holes.
Wild Earth is looking for unique wildlife sightings filmed by you. They can be old or new, from anywhere in the world, and filmed on a camera or on your phone. In return, we will give you cash and a chance to see your clip on TV with your name in the credits. It's easy. Post your clip to Instagram with the hashtag WildEarthClips. Get selected and get paid. Head over to wildearth.tv/content to find out more.
Now there's a sound that eland make that you sometimes hear, and there's different sort of understandings of how they do this, but often when they're walking, especially with the large bulls, you hear this clipping sound. I'm not sure if any of you have heard it, but imagine a tap dancer, you know that sound, just one tap of a tap dancer's shoe. It's a similar sound to that. Or if you take two spoons and you hit them together softly, that's sort of what the sound sounds like. And it's really interesting because when the older bulls are separated from the breeding group, and in the breeding group you're going to have young, and some of those young are going to be at a sub-adult stage. And they're slowly getting towards that dominant state where, you know, the bull just might choose to want to fight with them. And so they're always listening, and they keep an eye on where the bulls are in the distance. And often when those bulls or bull approaches the breeding group, those younger bulls can hear them coming just by that clipping of the hoof. And you see them, they start becoming nervous. They start shifting. And some of them even decide to run away. It's the most beautiful sound, this clipping of the hoof. Now, I'm not sure what Ralph thinks, if Ralph can also touch base with this. My understanding to it is that because they're so large and their hooves are split, that some of these big bulls, when they're walking, their hoof splays open and then they lift their leg and it clips closed, and their hoof then again opens up. When they put their foot down, they lift it, then it clips closed. And I think that's the reason why it clips. But if Ralph can also touch base on that, I would also like to know more. Now, Ralph has got amazing knowledge. I don't know if any of you know this, but Ralph is actually qualified in training young people to become guides. And he actually used to work at one of the training institutes out here. And I used to teach young people, not always young people. Some people wanted a career change and things like that. I would get them along and help them with their trails evaluations, which is a specialist qualification, walking on foot. And he did very well in that. Starbuck, hello, good to hear from you again. Starbuck, most definitely, they are the masters of their environment. It's so interesting that they would even be able to tell you by the footprints if an animal was pregnant or not. Can you imagine that knowledge? So sadly, you know, that some of that knowledge has gotten lost, and so we are still trying to regain that knowledge. But what they knew about the environment to what we know now, it's vastly different. The things they knew about plants, the signs of the animals, they would read the ground honestly like a newspaper. They knew exactly what was going on. And, you know, we often see this with some of the trackers. There's some very experienced trackers working in South Africa and Africa, throughout the world. But some of the trackers I was very blessed to work with. The knowledge is incredible. Now, I worked with a tracker once upon a time who was totally illiterate, couldn't read or write. And in modern society, you know, people would maybe think that that person is not the smartest of people because he couldn't read or write. But it couldn't be anything but the opposite. You put that man in the bush, he will show you amazing things that you never even knew was there. And as I tell you this story, I get a little bit of shivers on my arms here. But ultimately, when you become a guide, of course, you're going to learn every day. But you truly learn when you have a good tracker with you. They know the environment well. They've been tracking all their life. Their grandfathers tracked, their fathers tracked. It's quite nice that these elands have really gotten used to us being here, because we've parked here quite a distance away from them, and of course we have shown them no threat whatsoever. And so as you can see, some are feeding, others are just lying down. They're doing what they would normally do if we weren't here. And in my opinion, that is the whole point of, viewing animals. You don't want to disturb them. You want to watch them doing what they would normally do. That's exactly what's happening here. And they're all facing different directions. I just love this about the animals. It's something that they get ingrained in their brain from birth. So when you lie down, don't lie in the same position. You face different directions. If some of you can be standing while others are lying down, that's a bonus. That just enhances their chances of seeing any predators, any danger.
Well, it seems there was a little bit of a loss of connection there, but no loss of connection here at the Okukuyu waterhole. Now, it has thinned out a little bit, but we still got lots of springbok and the odd gemsbok. There's still some zebra milling about here and there. And you can start to hear the sounds of the springbok now. It's a very low pitched. Those are usually the rams. You might also hear some chitter chatter from people in the background. They line up here, just underneath the camera, but not to worry, it does not make any difference to the behavior of the animals. They're very used to the noises here. And at night, when the spotlight shines, the animals can't really see behind the light. So they don't worry at all. And I've had kids crying or shouting here next to the waterhole. It does not change any kind of the behavior. It's just been here so long that the animals are so used to it that nothing changes for them, whether the people are loud or not. Ooh, there's a little cronk from one of the springbok. Just listen into the sounds of the springbok there. There is a bit of wind about, not too much. Still coming in from the east, blowing over us towards the west. And that east wind is normally a very hot wind. So it can increase the temperature from, the wind chill factor. In this case, it would be the wind heat factor. Even though it might state it's 30 degrees with the wind, it can sometimes even increase it an extra 5 degrees. So the one bonus is that generally in these parts, the humidity is sometimes -5. So it's a very dry heat. And, 30 degrees with 80% humidity, for me, much less bearable than even 40-degree plus that you might get here in Etosha, but with 0% humidity. And as I say, sometimes even minus percentage humidity, because there's an extreme evaporation factor that you need to take into perspective here. Every now and then you do hear the call of the crimson-breasted shrike. It's got like that one or part of its call. There we go. Normally in the trees in the camp itself. So, springbok and crimson-breasted shrikes. Those are the sounds we're hearing. Just heading a little bit closer. And when you do zoom in, you also get a bit of more the real colors that you do see here at the waterhole. That very golden brown color on the fringes here as a result of the amount of elephant dung that has been deposited and then trampled into the soil. And so that's what gives it that orangey color. It's not the natural color of the soil in these parts. It's just as a result of mainly the elephants leaving their dung. I'm still hoping that we're going to be lucky and we get some lions coming down at some stage. And then you'll see the immediate dispersal of all these animals, standing off and watching from a distance. It's like we've got another flow of animals coming in, more zebra, while the oryx leave. It's like the impala and the kudu. Another phenomenon that you need to experience in Namibia is the east wind. It's crazy, that east wind.
Still ongoing. It hasn't stopped. Less jackals, though. And it's just such a pleasure to sit and watch this, really. And just think about all the things we're not seeing, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah, they've really started on the neck. From this angle, now that they've moved it a little bit, you can actually see they're really working their way up the neck. Couldn't really see that too much earlier. And just going back to the importance of carcasses, there was a study, and I believe it's from Holland, and it's in a nature reserve. Well, Oostvaardersplassen. I don't know if that is correct, but I have attempted to name the nature reserve. And it was quite an extensive study, which is good because you get facts, you get data, and it was relating to deer carcasses. And this was the same nature reserve that highlighted that plants located near the animal carcasses grew 5 times bigger than usual. That's a lot if you think about it. 5 times. That's not just double or triple, that's 5 times. And of course, this increased the number of invertebrates, arthropods, and then ultimately herbivores and predators. But what was a surprise in this study was that the effects on the plant growth lasted for months and months and months, up to a year. It wasn't just, of course you will see immediate effects naturally if you're in the right season. I guess it depends when the carcass sort of lies there throughout the year. But for months and months, up to a year after, they kept seeing positive effects from this carcass. Where are you going? Hello, friend. Oh, they've got such big paws, honestly. Huge paws, hyenas. So yes, that was a surprise. When you read the study, it says they did not expect that. The positive effects of plant growth and, you know, the knock-on effect to be so ongoing for months and months afterwards. And especially in Holland, they now have a rule about leaving dead wood. Naturally decaying wood can be quite smelly and maybe dirty and a lot of insect growth, so a lot of people remove it. And we sort of now have become accustomed to the fact that leaving dead wood is crucial. It's really, really important. The decay is important. Break the wood down. Although it doesn't sound very nice, maybe it doesn't smell very nice, that decay is essential for life. And ultimately, again, it leads to higher biodiversity. And I hope I don't offend any of you when I say this, but if I became president of the world, the one thing I would ban immediately, without even consulting any of my party, would be leaf blowers. They are the most insulting, noisiest, unbelievable machines. I cannot believe people still use these machines to this day. Anyway, I would get rid of leaf blowers. They're so unnecessary. You're blowing leaves from one part of the garden to the other. Of course you don't want leaves on a path, I get that, and maybe you want to remove them because when they get wet they can become very, very slippy and dangerous. But leaves in your garden, leave them. Campaign, leave the leaves. Let them decay. Let them be part of the cycle. It's amazing that people collect them then. I've seen people put them, they use a leaf blower, just so noisy. They put the leaves in a black plastic bag and then take it to the rubbish dump. I'm sorry, what? It's just leaves. It's organic matter. Let it decay, let it wilt, let it go through the natural cycle of the seasons. Anyway, that's my rant on leaf blowers. If you like leaf blowers, I'm really sorry if I've offended you, but I absolutely despise them. But it's sort of, we're becoming accustomed, let dead wood decay. It's knowledgeable now that there is lots of benefits to the environment from that. But again, there's still just not that familiarity with dead carcasses. And that does need to change. There needs to be a way around it, even if it is a small dormouse. I'm not talking about in your garden or your house. I'm talking about in nature reserves and wild species. because it just is so crucial, and the benefits are now visible. There are so many studies now that highlight the benefits from just having an animal sort of die here, and it would be so fascinating to actually monitor this area. We know where this giraffe died. We've been here 5 days. We know exactly the process, and it would just be so fascinating to come back in 6 months and in a year and in summer and then winter and just see what happens to the area. Test the soil. Monitor the plant life. And people think hyenas are so dirty. Yes, they're probably dirty right now, to be honest with you, but they are quite hygienic. They will clean, they will bathe, and they will groom. Just because they're eating meat from a carcass doesn't mean that they're dirty. Their tummies, on the other hand, well, that's something different. So if a carcass greatly benefits biodiversity, let's think of it like this. I've just said that it benefits the soil, the plant life, the herbivores, the predators, the arthropods, the full spectrum. So if it benefits biodiversity, then it ultimately benefits the functioning of an ecosystem. It increases the health and the function of an ecosystem. So the benefits that I'm referring to of a carcass are not small. It's not just that a few plants grow to 5 times their original size. It's not just that the hyenas get food and the jackals and the pied crows. It's so much more than that, and it increases the health and functioning of an ecosystem. Therefore, it's integral. Not only that, it happens over long periods. The benefit remains and sustains for long periods. And really, when you think about it, that's quite remarkable. I believe it was the welted thistle was the plant that grew 5 times larger. I wrote that down for you all, welted thistle. In the nature reserve that I cannot pronounce. PK, I don't think the animals have to worry about lychees so much. Lychees are not so prevalent in South Africa like they are in areas of the Amazon, but you do get lychees, obviously parasites of sort of riverine systems. I don't believe you would find lychees here in dams that empty then fill up, empty then fill up. I've never seen them. They also play their own role in the ecosystem, but I don't think the animals here have to worry about lychees. They're sort of found in more riverine estuary type systems. Naturally, ectoparasites are not as worrying as obviously endoparasites, the one that get inside. Worms, ringworms, tapeworms, the ones that sort of live inside your body. The internal parasites are the ones that are a lot more worrying for the animals out here. Look at that little jackal on the right. Just to the right of the hyena. Are you sleepy but you don't want to be? Obviously the jackal's lying down, but you can see the substantial size of the pied crows. Very similar size to the magpies in Europe. Really big birds. Oscar, that's quite a big question. Illness is really defined as any disease or sickness that affects the body and mind. So it's a really broad term. So it would really depend on what sickness you were referring to. But most likely, yes. They would. They would still feed on it. And I mean, hyenas are actually renowned for just being so robust to anything that they eat. It's unbelievable. They've actually studied hyenas quite extensively because they've never been affected by many of the diseases that you can sort of find out in the wild. Their stomach acid is just so low, the concentration of hydrochloric acid is so high that their gastric acidity, if you like, just destroys any potential pathogenic bacteria that enters into their system. And the beauty is that it blasts it away as soon as it goes down the esophagus into the stomach, which means that it doesn't even enter the small intestine, never mind the large intestine. So it doesn't give it a chance to cause an imbalance in the commensal gut flora. It doesn't change the gut microbiome. It doesn't spread, it doesn't allow the small intestine to sort of uptake any parasites or diseases into the body. So hyenas have literally never been affected by diseases that do wipe out other competitors, such as rabies, and they're frequently exposed to this fatal virus. Anthrax, canine distemper. Think of wild dogs. Many packs throughout Africa have been wiped out by the canine distemper virus. But hyenas no. And they do believe it is because of this incredible stomach acid that they have. I mean, they do live a hunting but also scavenging lifestyle. So they will be exposed to such a broad array of pathogens. But to go back to your question, they are equipped for pathogens. So they will still eat, if that makes sense. It's not going to stop them eating it. Their stomachs will obviously handle it. And it really does depend on what sickness you're referring to. We don't know how this giraffe died. It is believed to be more natural, not lions. And they still will eat it. But that is how diseases and bacteria does spread in the wild. In Djuma long ago, the lion prides actually suffered a terrible time from white mussel disease. And it came from the buffalo that they were eating and the terrible, poor nutrition of the buffalo. The animals will still eat. That was in times of drought. It was a really terrible time. I came at the very end of the drought. But it's a sort of degenerative muscle disease. It is found in large animals like your buffalo. And it can get passed on, and it went on to our lion prides.
Whoa, that's epic.
Garden orb-web spider.
Some African wild dogs and they're chasing something.
I can honestly say I've never seen anything like that before.
Hey, can you believe it?
That is amazing.
I feel like I'm sitting watching a soap opera. Wow, we're going for the leg. And we've just been watching this. I can't stop watching this. But just sort of referring back to Oscar's question, no organism will every organism is adapted to their environment. Although nothing in nature is static, change is the only constant. Really, everything's constantly changing. It may not be visible or obvious immediately. It could be subtle changes. Everything in nature is in a constant state of flux, but the animals adapt to that. Adaptation is really survival. And a hyena is a fantastic hunter, but also an incredible scavenger. And when I say an incredible scavenger, I mean the life of a scavenger, I don't think is given the... Is this hyena eating the hoof? Oh my goodness. Wow, okay, I'm gonna have to retract everything I said earlier. I really didn't think it was gonna go for the hoof like that. Wow. I mean, I didn't know that hyenas eat everything, but I'm still surprised. Wow. Okay, so in answer to that question from the Sunrise Safari, yes, they do eat hooves. Goodness, hyenas. But yes, what I was saying to Oscar's question is that animals must be able to adapt to the constant changes and live in that constant state of flux in a natural world. And hyenas are epic hunters. They are. I've watched them hunt. It's incredible. They hunt via coursing in great numbers, and it's amazing to watch. It's also horrible to watch, but the coordination and the power of the animals is amazing to watch. And they do also scavenge, and the scavenging lifestyle is not easy. There's danger involved in this sort of lifestyle. Lots of attentions will be drawn to carcasses. Other predators will come as dangerous. The elephants react. And in order to live this way, they have to have the built-in specializations to survive. And that's why, because they are such incredible scavengers, and it's not something to be sort of taken negatively, it's a very positive thing, that they are equipped to deal with eating meat that is old, or meat that might have bacteria, meat that is a bit putrid. It's all disgusting to us, absolutely. I don't even eat meat, full stop, so it's very disgusting to me. But what I'm saying is they're just adapted to that kind of lifestyle. Just like cheetahs are adapted to speed, leopards are adapted to hoist, vultures are adapted to scan for miles up in the air. Hyenas are really adapted for this kind of lifestyle. Everything about them. I just hate the word I hate that the word scavenging comes with so many negative connotations. And it does, even when I say it, I think it's just a negative word. And I wish we could turn that around, because what these animals in front of us are doing right now, well, not that one, but the other ones, is really positive. It's really positive for the environment. Imagine if they didn't do this. And the lions, or even this giraffe, it died naturally. And it just lay there. It just lay there, it remained unopened, nobody touched it. From spotted hyenas, brown hyenas, jackals, the lot, no one touched it. There was no scavengers. And then eventually the skin started to break, so the carcass eventually started to open. It would take so long to break down. It would probably break down a little bit quicker in summer than in winter, but still it would take so long. It would smell, everything would be released into the air, the nutrients would take so much longer to get into the soil, and it wouldn't be spread, it would just remain in this exact spot. And imagine all the other carcasses. Apparently a buffalo died this morning, again of natural causes. I think it got stuck. It was found, there was no predator on it. So imagine all these animals that pass away, or do get killed by lions, and the lions leave. I guess that's not a good example, because most of the meat is gone, but let's just say natural carcasses. It would create a very dirty and not such a positive, thriving environment. So we need to turn that word around and make it more positive, because what these guys are doing is awesome. Look at them, they're cleaning everything up. That hyena is munching on a giraffe's hoof, which I never ever thought I would see, and there you go. It looks delicious. I mean, this hyena is thoroughly enjoying it. And all of these creatures are just breaking it down, breaking it down. And they all hunt as well, every single one of them, from the pied crows to the jackals to the spotted hyenas. But of course, if they come across a carcass like this, of course they're going to make the most of it. There's a hub of activity, really important activity going on here. Including bathing. Our little swimmers coming out of the water. I think we're going for a sleep. There will be a lot of hyenas all resting around here. We just can't see them. Roman Rhino, you're saying every day is like school day with me. You love learning. Me too. Me too. And although I read a lot, I'm an avid reader. I love it. I read multiple books at the one time. It's actually a terrible habit passed on by my mother. But we sometimes forget the power of learning through observation. And I don't mean watching. I don't mean watching a documentary or watching a movie. I'm talking about observing. No one's narrating here. No one's putting cuts together or using multiple wild dogs and pretending it's the same female. And I won't name and shame. But just by observing, listening, being proven wrong. This hyena I said earlier that they don't eat the hooves. Of course, proved me wrong. I won't forget that in a hurry, but it's also important to just watch. It's been such a fascinating few days for me, really. Obviously, I'm drawn to it because I love hyenas, but I just think it's been a really, really fascinating experience to have this much activity on a carcass. Especially in a different sort of environment. I'm used to it in the Lowveld, but in Madikwe, it's nice to see it happen in a different environment.
Well, thanks, Lauren. And well, of course, we're still here at the Okokuyo waterhole. And guess what? There are some giraffe coming down now. Let's see. They do normally take rather a long time to come down. But yesterday they did surprise me. There was one that it seemed like it was an older bull. He didn't take too long to come down. Maybe he was just very, very thirsty. But generally, as we'll see here, they normally zigzag a lot there in the background before they actually come through and get down to drink. Very important because generally, and you know, my thinking would be, you see that giraffe that all the hyenas are feeding on there with Lauren, next to a waterhole, like she says, possibility of a natural death. But in my mind, that's when they're the most vulnerable. So I would hedge my bets more on it actually have been taken down as it was drinking, because that's the best chance for predators to actually take out a giraffe, and at least it expects it. Its head is down, it's not looking up, and it's also hunched over or doing the splits, so difficult for it to get away very quickly, and hence why they're so nervous when they make their way down to the water, because this is when they're at their most vulnerable. So that's what I would think, but unless somebody has actually witnessed what happened, it would all just be speculation. And with there being so much movement there now around that carcass, all the tracks that would have been there with the initial evidence of what happened to the animal has now all been squashed by all the activity on top of it. Now, Andrew also was speaking about eland earlier, and the reason, you know, behind the clicks of their toes. Well, if you look at the structure of their toes in particular, and I've tracked these animals on hundreds of occasions, and looking at their tracks, it's particularly a physiological way that they grow. The one toe, it grows slightly across and in front the second toe. So when they walk, it then clicks against each other. So I don't know why they've evolved in this particular direction and what that has come about because of, but that is the pure reason that it happens. And young and old, all eland display, or you hear that click because of the toes clicking past each other. So this one giraffe hasn't taken too long to come down and drink. Maybe the lions haven't been present for quite some time. We'll find then that the animals do start to get into a relaxed phase, and maybe that's why. Maybe the Umbika lions are living up to their name and hanging more at the or around the Umbika waterhole. Still lots of sound from the springbok. Just going a little bit closer so we can see these giraffe actually drinking. And the springbok can almost sound frog-like when they call like that. See, here it seems the Namibian giraffe prefer the splits. You don't see many of them doing the crouch. Might have something to do with a lot of rocks that they have in front there, and they can get better purchase if they spread their legs like this. I'm not quite sure, but you do see at different places that the giraffe employ a different technique. It's either the splits or a crouch going forward, or a bit of half-half. And I found at Kariga, the giraffe there did more of the crouch, where I found at Mashatu, at that waterhole there, that most of them were doing a bit of a mix of both. So it does seem that different giraffe employ the different tactics of how they actually lower their head down for drinking in different parts. Whether that's by preference, by chance, I'm not quite sure. And it seems like there's always one of these oryx in the middle. They really prefer it. in there. There's our blacksmith lapwing calling, and you just see it flying across. It'll be heating up nicely now, and so this is why we're getting lots more animals coming down to drink. A couple of youngsters in this group of giraffe as well. Lots of vocalizations of the springbok. Kevin, no, you do get calcrete. You even get it in the Eastern Cape. It's generally where you have a lot of sedimentary rocks and old ancient areas where there was sort of lakes that have dried up, etc. But those lakes or natural reserves, reservoirs, would have had to be there over a long period of time for that sediment to build up. And then land up with this kind of calcrete. So the Eastern Cape, also having been below the surface of the ocean for thousands, if not millions of years, lots and lots of buildup. So you also get calcrete down in these parts. I know you also get calcrete in areas of the Karoo, but I don't know of any other area that's as widely covered by calcrete as the Etosha area itself. So this is massive. This is hundreds of kilometers that, even from the area at Ocho, which is the town south of Etosha, even there you have these white rocks. And as you drive from Damaraland, so even Kamanyab side, and you drive east towards Etosha, it's sort of the soil turns from a reddy brown and slowly into this white as you get closer to Etosha. But even from 100 kilometers away, you start having this white look to it. And I often say to my guests, as we leave the red, rocky granite type soils that you have in Damaraland, very particular colors, it's very red, yellow, those kind of colors. And then as soon as you start heading towards Etosha, you start getting this white color, even next to the roads, and you can literally see the change start happening. And then obviously, as you get into the park itself, everything is just white. But it extends over a massive area, and from that big ancient inland sea that was fed by the Kunene River. So this was huge. And so obviously over all that time of the sediments coming in and then it having dried up, and then we're left with this kind of rocky substrate and soils as a result. Very salty as well. So if you go to Okukuyu, if you go to Etosha, the water is drinkable out of the taps. But what I used to do is for my guests, if they didn't want to buy water from the camp, it gets quite expensive, and I never do that. If there's drinkable water out of the taps, I always drink it. But then what I used to do is just take lemon juice concentrate, and just put a few drops in it, and it just takes away that salty flavor. And I think I would think, I don't know what the water tests would say at Etosha, but I think that you'd probably find that the water there would be more healthy than most other places, because it's got a lot of minerals, and including the salts, it keep you very well hydrated. When you do get dehydrated, you can't just replace water. You do need to replace mineral salts as well. And that's why we go for the likes of rehydrate sachets. But I think the Namibian Etosha drinkable water out of the taps is free rehydrates. And it's incredible. Across Namibia, the groundwater is exceptional. And you can drink the water out of the taps pretty much everywhere in Namibia. There's a couple of exceptions, maybe some places in Windhoek, and that's just obviously with the sheer population of humans there. But right from Sossusvlei to Damaraland and Kakaland, and right up into the north, the tap water is wonderful. It's beautiful water to drink. Going up into the Caprivi, maybe not so, because obviously a lot of water there just comes directly out of the river. And so it is better then to make provisions. And when I used to go on my camping safaris, I would always fill up my big water tanks in my trailer or in my safari vehicle. We always had big provisions because sometimes I would have to go 7 to 10 days being autonomous, having the tents, the food, the water, the wood, everything for us. So I always had to plan where I had to fill up the water. I wouldn't fill up in Etosha or in Swakopmund because both those places, it's got quite a salty taste to it. But I would fill up in Sossusvlei as well as in Damaraland and Kakaland because the water is just so fresh, so lovely. It's brilliant. And including the likes of Twyfelfontein, but right through Damaraland, some of the best, as well as in the Sossusvlei area, in that desert environment, but good underground water.
Wild Earth's mission is an expensive one, but we know that our live experience is important to so many people that cannot afford to pay for it. We have added a donate button to our website. By donating, you are directly helping us share our free nature experiences with the world. We want Wild Earth to reach children, budding conservationists, and the less fortunate. A little money goes a long way. You can make a difference to someone today.
So, as I was just chatting during the break, if you want to know something quite special and different about Namibia, just have a look up on Lake Ochikoto. I think there is another name used for it. It's like the Dragon's Lair or the Dragon's Lake or something like this, but it is obviously steeped in mythology and legend. But one of the largest and intensive underground aquifers in the world. So Otjikoto, it's Otjikoto. Have a look at that. It's quite incredible, and it just goes to show that we haven't discovered a lot of even the land mass that we claim to know a lot about, but in this particular part of Namibia, it still remains undiscovered. There's also parts down in the ephemeral rivers where it gets quite mountainous in Damaraland, along the Huab River, the Uchab River, the Guantagab. I've been lost in some of those parts with guests while I've been on foot, relying on a GPS, but a GPS can tell you a straight line where you need to get to your destination. However, sometimes doesn't take into account the mountains that you need to walk past, through, over, and so I've taken the wrong canyons a couple of times and landed up in places where I'm pretty sure a human has never ever been. It's incredible, and there's lots of parts of Namibia that are still undiscovered. Yes, it could be mapped, but has anyone ever been there? And I'm pretty sure that I've been places no one else has been, and that's the beauty of this particular country. So the ebbs and flows continue. You see, it got a little bit quiet, and now it's starting to get jam-packed again. The animals moving through. The giraffes seem to have had their drink, and they're having just a little bit of a conference there. And I think they'll slowly start moving off. Looks like lots more zebra moving in as well. There's always, I'm pretty sure it's different solitary gemsbok that are coming in. And there's a couple in the background as well. Wind seems to be picking up now towards midday. You might see some of the animals also enjoying the shade off under this camel thorn to the left. Also, always want to have a look there because there was a lovely nest of Vero's eagle owls in there. They used to always come down and drink at night. I don't know if it's still there anymore or if it's still active, but it is one of the bigger trees and right next to a waterhole, so it makes sense. Fabian, that's a good question. The most important lesson I've learned from the bush is probably to always respect the bush. You can be complacent, and from living, especially in very remote places and being out with guests, I think you always need to remember about your specific resources that you have in terms of survival. So when I was going out, taking people under my care, all under my responsibility, etc., it was very important to remind people about the dangers, not to make them scared, but to remind them that there's always potential for scorpions, for snakes, always to look after our water. And, I always had to keep our food protected because, the animals out there, they can smell it. So I used to have visitors of jackals, of hyenas, of bat-eared foxes, aardwolves, sometimes even lions and elephants. I've had elephants shaking my vehicle to get to the fruit and vegetable in the back. I had a 130 Land Rover, and at the back it was a pickup type with a cage. So that's where I put all our fruit and veg and our meat. I had a fridge in there, and it was in Kakaland at Puros, in fact, and that's on the banks of the Huarusip River. And during the middle of the day, we were having lunch, and an elephant walked through the camp. And he came towards us, so I just got everybody up off the table and moved back, and we watched him. And my cage was closed on the back, of the vehicle, but he went on over there and he could obviously smell the fruit and veg in the back, and he shook that Land Rover from side to side. It was on two wheels, two wheels, two wheels, two wheels. I thought he was going to throw it completely over onto its roof. But he kept shaking it until the one side of my cage popped up because it's on a little spring system. So I don't know, if from the shaking, he managed to get one of those popped open and then proceeded to eat all my butternut, my gem squash, my fruit, bananas, apples, everything that I had for our 3-night stay there at Puros. But we just had to leave the elephant to carry on and do his thing, because in that particular instance, it was better for us just to let him eat it than for me to do anything stupid and try and chase him off. Luckily, I'd made provisions, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. I always had lots of canned food, whether it's baked beans or Viennas or some bully beef. I always had that stashed in the event that we had some kind of scenario. And I often got laughed at with some of the other guides. Why do you keep this? You're just carrying extra weight, etc. I always said one day I'm going to need it. And for 3 days, we ate tin food. But those guests were still very happy. And they were kind of meals that I produced from those tin food. But if we didn't have that, we would have literally had to leave and change our itinerary to go and get into town, spend extra budget on fuel, and all that kind of stuff, because we wouldn't have been able to carry on without food. So always important. And another situation that I had was with big groups of people that I was out on foot with in Damaraland. We actually had um, the fire brigade that were with us, and we had a couple of different groups. And the other guides were a little bit more experienced in the area than I was. And so they said, no, they know the area, etc. And every day we would go through a briefing and look at the topographical maps. And, at that stage, we didn't have really fully functional GPSs like we have now. So compass and a topographical map. And so we used to go through that in the evenings and then work out where exactly we were going to be walking the next day, because this was like 5 to 8 days walking in the desert itself. And the other guides, they weren't interested in the maps. I was the only one that would say, okay, I'll take the maps then. Lekker, thanks guys, because then I would check my landmarks as we would go along and reference it back to the map, always triangulating, etc. And it was on one of these days that the guides had said that they know exactly where they're going. And so I always appreciated having the map with me. I don't mind being mocked. But one of the groups, the one day, they got very, very badly lost. And this was in the area around the Doros crater. There's a lot of black rhino there. And we arrived at camp long before sunset. We were perfectly on time. I think we were ahead of time. And we were already sitting next to the fire, being jovial, and the sun was starting to go down. And we were like, where are these other guys, the other group? And the other guys had gotten very badly lost. They'd landed up inside the Doros crater itself. And they had to be rescued. We eventually landed. They went up and got on top of the Doros crater and got radio signal. And they called us and they told us where they were. But now, by this time, they were too far away from camp to reach camp by sunset. So we had to go and fetch them. Well, I tell you what, after that, I was fighting the guys for the maps. But it was a very good lesson to the other guys that you might think that you know the area, but there's always a chance of getting lost. So the lesson for me was, and I knew it before the time, you always take everything that is possible for keeping yourself safe, for keeping your group safe, and leave no stone unturned in that process, especially when you have people under your care and under your responsibility. So I think that was a very good lesson for that older, more experienced guide that had become a little bit cocky within the environment that he was walking. And he wanted to show me that he was the more experienced guide and he didn't need maps. What is he going to do with a map? He knows this place. So Yeah, I think it's important not to get cocky, because the wilderness will put you back in your place. It's the same like with the ocean. Don't get cocky with the ocean. You think you take on bigger waves than you can, you're gonna get sorted out. Don't take on an elephant. Eventually, one day, you're gonna get swatted like a fly. So those are my. I know it's quite an extensive little talk on what I've learned. Um, but I think that's it. Being in these particular wilderness environments and scenarios, especially with guests, and having everything that you need under your care, from the vehicle to the food to the water to the wood and fire. Um, I think you learn a lot of survival skills, especially when you're in the thick of it, and you're having to look after people. So those are the lessons that I've learned, and I think I'd pass on to any new guide that was heading out, especially into Namibia. Don't think that you're bigger than your boots, because it will deal with you in one way or another, sooner or later. But yeah, so looks like those springbokkies just enjoying the shade. What else is happening at the waterhole? We're slowly heading to the end of the show, and it seems like it's been another lovely escape to nature. Lots of activity there with Lauren next to that giraffe carcass. That is just the gift that keeps on giving. It's always wonderful to get a big carcass like that and just watch as the evolution of the carcass continues, with all the predators that come in. If it's an elephant carcass, a giraffe carcass, hippo carcass, I'd do exactly what Lauren's doing and go and sit there and just watch as it unfolds. So, folks, as always, thanks for watching. Thanks to the whole Wild Earth team, especially the guys behind the scenes that do most of the work, from the directors to the tech guys, producers, editors, etc., etc. You guys rock. And then the cam ops and me here. This is the easy part, just making the camera move around and talking nonsense. But it's always wonderful to see what's happening across all the different locations. And from here in Okukuyu to Djuma, we didn't go there today because there was a little bit too much wind and not very much happening either. But Andrew on Amakhala, Lauren in Madikwe, it's been fantastic. So don't forget, later on, there will be the Sunset Safari. My name's Ralph Kirsten. Stick around, but we'll catch you later. Bye for now.